So, very, very good morning, everyone who is here, and welcome to this, which is today the first in a series of 6 teachings on dhyana paramita. If we speak very generally, we can say meditation paramita. And also those of you joining us on YouTube in timeless time and spaceless space, because then good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. So let's start today in the very, very best way, as we try to do, whether we're practicing meditation, whether we are studying about meditation or studying about anything. We try to remind ourselves as deeply as possible of our bodhisattva commitment, of bodhicitta, and how we are here for everyone. Of course, everyone includes ourselves, and very specially includes ourselves, because the idea is, by you getting enlightened, a lot of people will benefit. No, a lot. Many, 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 many. It's the very best thing you could ever do for anybody and everybody. So we remember that. Remember that this life is a fleeting moment amongst many, many, many lives. And we have a wonderful, wonderful special opportunity to deepen our Dharma practice and really set ourselves on the road to enlightenment, path of Bodhi. So we turn our hearts in great love, great care to all our fellow sentient beings, with a very special awareness of those sentient beings we've known in this life, who are very connected to not just our karma, but to our mind. Our mind has been shaped so much by the important people in our lives. So thinking of those very specially, and thinking of enlightenment, our future, then we do our prayers. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of the most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural and sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering. And may they attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Dhyata shame shamavate shameta shadro Am kurimara karota keore Tejovati oloyane beshudane male malapanaye Kukure kaka grase Grasana omukhi paramukhi amukhi Shammedavane savagraha bandhanane Nigrihitva sava bhava pravadina vimukta Maharapasha Savitva Buddha Mudra Anugatita Sava Mare Buttarita Parishuddhi Bhikkha Shantu Sava Mara Kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So today we are entering this fifth of the 6 paramita, and having this year spent a little more time with the previous 4. So not long ago, a few weeks back, we finished our journey through the paramita of diligence. An interesting one, because you can't just be diligent. It is the way we are practicing the first 3 paramitas this far. We are being diligently generous, diligently practicing right conduct, and diligently forbearing and overcoming our negative responses. So diligence was interesting. We've seen in general with our overview of the paramita that they go from the easiest to understand and the easiest to practice to the more and more subtle and complicated and profound to understand, and the more difficult to practice. Of course, you can't really practice it until you do understand it, so those 2 things go together. Difficult to understand, difficult to practice. And we'll be journeying through this next paramita, which is called dhyana paramita. In Sanskrit, in terms of the 6 paramitas in the Bodhisattva path, we are just with Sanskrit. There is an equivalent for dhyana, which is jhana, Jhana, in Pali, but Pali do not have the Bodhisattva path of the 6 paramitas. So really, we're in dhyana paramita. And we'll be mainly studying this through Gampopa's teachings. In Gampopa's teachings on this, we stay within Mahayana. He gives us a classical Mahayana presentation of dhyana. He mentions very briefly that there are other meditations, Mahamudra, Vajrayana, Tantra, but he does not include those. So this course will be mainly Gampopa's teachings, so that it's coherent with the other of the 6 paramitas, and we get the Bodhisattva's view of the way to enlightenment. But seeing as most of us think of this as meditation paramita, then the word meditation covers a much bigger spectrum, and I will need to say something about that. Once we've gone through Gampopa's teachings, we'll need to look at what we have in Tantra and in Vajrayana. So that's kind of the master plan. We have 6 weeks, 6 sessions, and after today's session, then we have the next session is in a fortnight's time, because next week is our monthly Tonglen for those who are on the Tonglen training. So before we plunge into Gampopa, which is sort of systematic, step by step, I want to talk generally And even though it's general and it's not on your paper support, don't space out too much, because this will also be homework for those of you willing to do homework, a very special homework, because you need to apply it to yourself. So I have a not easy task now, and that is to try and share my 50 years experience of Buddhist meditation and what goes on and what's been taught about it and what I've seen happen with people, and all of my work about meditation, to try and tease out some very important points to help you in your own journey. So I do my best. And I think the best way to approach it is through language. I know many of you are not interested in language. Language is Sanskrit, Pali, and Tibetan and all of that, but it really is quite revealing. You see, these teachings went from India to Tibet, Buddhist teachings, first, 1,200 years after Buddha taught. 1,200 years in which lots had happened. Lots. And then they went and they continued going over from India to Tibet from the 7th to the 12th century. So for 500 years, it was not as though Tibetan Buddhism started in the 8th century, 7th century, and that was it. It gradually fell into place. It's quite a hair-raising story, but we're not looking at that today. But as far as meditation goes, it's a very, very interesting story about what trickled in when, from what sources, which schools developed because of it, and so on. It's a topic of study. We might do it one day. It's called the 8 Great Chariots. Chariots is a nice word, but I think if you think of a chariot, you think of quite a small thing. Maybe a Roman chariot with one horse and one rider. Actually, the word, which is nicely translated as chariot, means more like cartload, a big wagon load of stuff. So we look at the 8 great wagon loads of Dharma, and especially meditation techniques and transmissions that came to Tibet. And then over the centuries, how they reduced down to 5, because some were absorbed into others, and how our Kagyu lineage has an amazing wealth of other lineages that came into it. Anyway, that's another story. But as Buddhism went to Tibet, then they had to translate from the Indian, from the Sanskrit. In meditation, which is our topic, there are many precise words. It's not easy for a translator like myself, because we don't have the same range of precise terms in English. Very often we end up using the Sanskrit, or we have to make up terms, but then one translator makes up one term, another translator makes another term, then they get published as books, and people reading books get a bit lost. But there is, in Sanskrit and in Tibetan, a very precise set of terms to do with the main points of meditation. So far, so good. But then Tibetans found a need for a term which isn't really translating from Sanskrit. You can back translate it, sort of, but it will correspond to our English word meditation as one word that covers lots and lots of things. And in Tibetan, it is Gom. It's a nice word. You might want to try it with me. Don't turn your sound on, but have a go. Gom, gom, right? So gom, what does it mean? It takes us to the heart of what we're really talking about with meditation as a big topic. And then, not easily, we have to marry this general idea of what are we doing with Gom, with all of our meditation techniques, methods, what we do. What are we doing as opposed to dhyana paramita, this more precise topic of dhyana. So let's start with Gom. If we back translate Gom into Sanskrit, we get a term based on bhava. Bhava comes up a lot in Sanskrit. Bhava means becoming. Becoming. So you can translate it back as something like bhavayati. It's one possibility. But we're not really interested here in the Sanskrit. We're interested in Gom. It's so general in Tibetan when we talk about what's he doing. You can say, oh, he's meditating. Gom, Gomja. Use it all the time. So Gom is good because we have etymology going right back to a root meaning which really puts its finger right on everything we're doing with meditation. That's most interesting for us. Before we focus on dhyana paramita, what the hell are we doing meditating as Buddhists? And meditation's important because it's Buddhism's speciality. It's what they do. Of course, you have meditation, contemplation in other traditions, but it's really at the heart of Dharma. It's very, very important. So if we go back to Buddha's very famous saying, you'll find it in the Dhammapada in many places. He says, my teachings are three things. Avoid all harm. That's number one, is priority. As Buddhists, our first priority is to avoid harming others, but not just others, avoid harming ourselves with karma, mainly, and with where we let our mind go, where we let our mind take us, but it's mainly to do with others there. It's to stop once and for all harm, anything that harms. That's one. Number two, to practice all that's good. It says to practice every virtue. Number three, to tame one's mind. So he says to stop all harm, to practice every virtue, to tame one's mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So the first two things, everyone can do their best to apply them. If you're Buddhist, lay Buddhist, monastic Buddhist, doesn't matter, then we start to understand karma, the power of karma, the influence we have on other people, the impact our life has on others, and we want never to harm any living being in any way ever again. We're doing our best to move in that direction. We want to be useful, be kind, be helpful, be of use to others, and do good things. We can all do that. But then to tame one's mind is deep. And it takes a lot, as we'll see as we do go into dhyana paramita. So although all of us trying to do it, all of us Buddhists, in the past, it was mainly the domain of monastics, whose time and life was given to meditating, because it's only through Gom that we can come to do two things. First, understand the mind, and then to tame it. You can't really tame it until you are very much clearer about what goes on in your mind. So this word Gom is about, is, when we look into the etymology, it's about familiarity. I suppose, that's the closest we can get to the root feeling. And to understand that, we need to know that all of this is about habit. Habit develops through familiarity. We do something, we do it again, we get used to doing it. It becomes what we do automatically. So we have habits. We've all got lots of habits. We have physical habits, we have speech habits, we have mind habits. That's who we are. A big soup of habits. Our mind goes habitually to thoughts and reactions. Our emotions react through habit. What we say, sometimes we say through habit. Very often afterwards, too late, we said it, because they're the words that come out. And habit. Dharma is about new habits. I think of it as the opposite of Aladdin. You know the story of Aladdin and the lamp? Basically, he gets ripped off, right? New lamps for old. Somebody's going to give him a bright, new, modern lamp for his old, outdated lamp, which is magical. So he gets ripped off. Here, it's the opposite. In Dharma, we get new habits, good habits. And we replace our old habits, which damage us, which harm other people, which stop us from making virtue, doing good, with new habits. It's a liberation. But because we are creatures of habit, and because habits are so powerfully ingrained, and of course, it's a wonderful age we live in from some respects, because the brand new science of psychology is only a century or two old. But the everyday person is much more familiar with psychology now. It's in our thinking. Kids at school don't think like kids at school thought when I was a kid. Psychology in the last 60 years has become common knowledge and developed in itself so much. So we know that some habits, especially those ingrained in early years, are very, very hard to even recognize, because they are so familiar, we don't see them. Maybe other people see them better than we do, some of them. So anyway, the word Gom, and this is the point I want to make, which is translated as meditation, but it means anything that can help change our habitual way of being. And this is why when we back translate it, it's related to bhava. Bhava in Sanskrit is about becoming. Becoming. In English language, there's a very powerful use of that. We say, what's become of you? If somebody said that to you, it's quite, they probably wouldn't say it unless they're thinking, you're getting worse. Look what's become of you. And so this is the homework. Is to reflect on what's become of us. What's become of us as human beings in general. Why did we become what we became? Always see all the different influences. And this is great if you did the dying course as well and the journaling, then you've been looking into that story in some detail about how you became. And then also what's become of you since you became, what's become of you since you became a Buddhist. So you became a Buddhist, or did you? Did you adopt Buddhism and make it your new samsara? In which case you didn't really become a Buddhist. You became a samsarist with a Buddhist badge. Anyway, since you got teachings, since you got transmission, since you got instruction, especially for the old timers, people who've been around for 20, 30, 40 years, what became of you through all of that? This is a very, very important question. And how does the becoming work? It works through habits. Gom, which means becoming familiar, developing new habits, applies to everything we can do, not just on the meditation cushion. Anything we can do to make our habits better for us and better for everybody. So, for instance, it can apply very powerfully in not on your meditation cushion, but in everyday life when you are speaking with people. There, in what we say when we spread gossip, all this thing, right speech, wrong speech, we can only really develop new habits with that in daily life, not on your meditation cushion, because you're not talking with anybody. You can think about it there. You can do a debriefing from what happened earlier on in the day or yesterday when you had an argument with somebody. But the actual training of a different response can only happen in everyday life when you're talking, or like swatting mosquitoes. At first, we have to really train ourselves of not a biz little load of swear words and want to get rid of it, but mummy, mummy, welcome to dinner. Enjoy. I remember once I was with Akon Rinpoche in Zimbabwe, in the old Harare shrine room, which was a traditional structure with sort of open windows and big straw roof. And it was autumn season there. And Sering Tashi, Akon Rinpoche's nephew, was with him as his attendant. So he's a monk, so he had just, and it was warm, so he had just the little waistcoat on and these bare shoulders. And I was sitting next to him. I had a shirt. We were seeing these huge black mosquitoes sort of land, 1, 2, and he's kind of looking, and he's looking at me, and we're smiling. And Rinpoche is giving his talk. And we're just seeing them dig in and suck out. And so that's a physical habit. You can't do that. I mean, you might get mosquitoes on your meditation cushion, but maybe you've got incense burning and other things, and you don't get so many. So when we're talking about Gom and the basic injunction of the Buddha, tame your mind, we're talking very generally about habit reversal, habit changing, making very nice new habits. It applies 24/7, all day through our life. That's kind of one area of what I wanted to say today as an introduction. Now, second area, still with language, there are two topics I've found over the last 50 years that Tibetan Lamas are, I'm going to find the right word. I don't want to say something that's a bit confused about. Okay, that's not the right word. But two areas they don't like to go into in much detail. And this goes back, it's not their fault. This goes way back. You need to understand the history of Dharma, how it developed in India, how it went to Tibet, especially the first 700-800 years of Dharma, how it evolved, to understand these were areas of either difficult topics or some confusion. And this is carried through over the centuries. The two topics, first one's interdependence, interdependent origination, and the 12 links. It's quite deep, it's quite complicated, and there are several ways of viewing it. And more these days, but in the first 30 years of Dharma, Tibetan Buddhism in the West, it wasn't a topic that Lamas were comfortable teaching very much. But that's because it's complicated and multidimensional. But the other one is about dhyana. And so I need to just go quickly, if you'll bear with me, through the history, one thing, and through what you meet today, another thing. And it's about dhyana and what it means, and jhana, Jhana, in the Pali, and what in the early days of Buddhism, dhyana mainly meant. This is, so you can see it's not an easy topic for me. This is why Tibetan Lamas avoid it very often. What happens when Tibetan Lamas present it is they go back to the early days teachings about the 4 dhyanas, the 4 jhanas, which is a very precise meditation journey followed on the Hinayana path. You can call it the Shravaka path, but it's their way to liberation. It's their way to becoming an arhat. Their journey to Shravaka liberation, to becoming an arhat, is a basic exit from existence. You do all you can to get out. That's it. One person saved from samsara. You get out. You shut down, close all the doors, turn off the gas for samsara. It can't exist anymore. You just stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it. And the way you do that is through dhyana, is through absorbing the mind totally in one way, and then you take that deeper and deeper and deeper and into formless meditation, the process is so concentrated that all your samsaric habits have to die. They come up, there's nobody interested in them anymore. These thoughts, these feelings, these impulses to do this, go there, be that, be this. Your mind is so one-pointed, concentrated in meditation practice, very specific meditation practice based on what we call kasinas, where you make reproductions of symbols of the elements, earth, water, fire, wind, space, and you go deep into the meditation. And at the end of it, there is nothing but peace. That is the journey of jhana, dhyana, that many have practiced in the early centuries of Buddhism. And as Mahayana and Bodhisattva Buddhism developed, and then Vajrayana Buddhism developed, somehow, for some reason, the teachers keep this jhana template as their main way of explaining what is dhyana. It doesn't work satisfactorily 100%. I need to tell you that. I can't elaborate. It will be a whole couple of courses about what's going on there and what happened in the history. But we are entering into Gampopa's teachings on dhyana paramita, and we need to know that what originally was dhyana, which was the Hinayana way for one person to get out of samsara, is not the Mahayana way where we stay engaged in life so we can help people, and where life itself and people and their suffering and their circumstances is the very necessary ground for our bodhisattva's heart to open. You can't learn how to help people from a book. You can't learn how to help people sitting on your bottom alone. You have to engage with people and their minds, their karma and their circumstance, and learn the hard way, and then gain an invaluable wealth of experience so that you can become a friend to more and more people. I think if you've had experience in humanitarian work, helping the hungry and so on, it's a whole journey of learning about people and their circumstances and how to help them in their poverty. If you've helped people with substance abuse problems, it's another journey, and you can only learn it through being with them, helping people. It's very hands-on experience. So as bodhisattvas, we are not doing everything we can to just extract ourselves from life and be on the cushion all the time, so that in the end, there's nothing but peace in our mind, and when this body dies, that peace is where we go. That's the idea. We are not on that journey, but that template for how you absorb your mind in the first dhyana, the second dhyana, third dhyana, fourth dhyana, and then the four formless meditations, limitless space, limitless consciousness, nothing whatsoever, that's the name of it, and neither cognition nor absence of cognition. We did look at that this year in the teachings on karma, cause and effect. We looked at non-virtuous karma, virtuous karma, and then we looked at what we called immobility karma, and that was about the four dhyanas and the four formless meditations and the karma they make. So actually we study those when we study karma more than we do when we look at dhyana paramita. So I think you're starting to saturate, because this is very theoretical and it's maybe not of any interest to you just now. But it's something I can share with you that you won't really find in a book. You won't find in all the classical online teachings where they do this topic, that topic. I think it's something you need to know, and especially if you've been involved either with Theravada Buddhism or to a certain extent with Vipassana, Goenka's Vipassana, then you can get confused when you come to Tibetan Buddhism and you're not quite sure what they're doing with meditation. That's why I am saying some of this. So now, before we plunge into Gampopa, because then I'm on rails. Once we're into Gampopa, I'm on rails. It's a train. I could do it in my sleep. For me, this is the important stuff that I'm telling you now. The details you can get anywhere. But anyway, so in our 6 paramita, we're going from deeper to deeper. Now, why is meditation so much deeper and harder to understand? Is because now we are getting totally into something to do with mind. Your mind. And it's not so tangible as generosity and the other ones, which are a lot to do with what we can do physically to help others, what we can do verbally to help, support, to teach others. It's all about you and your mind. And there's a topic in Western philosophy, actually, but I don't know enough about Western philosophy to find it. I saw an amazing paper about 30 years ago. I read it so avidly. And at the time I didn't keep it. And I've looked for it ever since and I've not found it. But it was about the discrete or the secret nature of mind. Your mind, you will never be known by anybody else. No one can get in there. Nobody can come and visit you like a stately home. You can't pay money and take a tour around your mind. Even the people you love and live with for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, they won't know you 100%. There'll be bits of you they could never know, because they only know through observation, conversation, words, and so on. Your mind, only you can know. There it gets complicated, because we don't know ourselves. This famous injunction, Emerald Tablet, Hermes Trismegistus, and all the rest, know yourself. We don't. We know an illusion of ourself, and this is the big point of the Buddha's teaching. Get to know who you really are, which in our tradition is Buddha, as opposed to all the delusions you've created of personality, of persona, of identity. And this journey of getting to know your own mind is the journey of Gom, of meditation in general. It is not the journey of jhana, dhyana. That's a journey of becoming more and more concentrated till there's nothing left but peace. Here, this getting to know yourself so that you can work on yourself and become a bodhisattva and transform who you are, not get rid of it all. Can you see the huge difference? One is you throw yourself in the bin, in exchange for peace. The other is you transform yourself into the most beautiful, saintly being in the whole universe. Very different, so different. So when in general, as a bodhisattva, we're looking at dhyana, paramita, we're looking at this use of meditation to transform ourselves. And then we have to know in that our mind is totally personal. Nobody else will ever know us, maybe with a very excellent guru, the very best. Then they can pretty much know everything about you. They have this power. It's part of the 10 powers that are developed in the bodhisattva levels that come to fruition on the last level, become perfect at Buddhahood. Very, very excellent Lama. Very few of those exist. Can know you maybe better than you know yourself at first. This is why we turn to them for help. But in the end, only we can know ourselves because we are the mind we are working with. We are in the mind we are working with. We are the mind we are working with. Everyone else is a mystery. No one else can come in there like you get a plumber in to do your drains, or you get an electrician in to come in and do your wiring. Only we can do it. This is a fundamental point of the Buddha's teaching. Buddha said, I can't liberate you. Of course they can't. There have been so many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, we wouldn't be here if they could. We'd have been liberated ages ago. So many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, no matter how hard they tried, no matter what they did, they could not save you. Only you can save you in this discrete, secret area, which is your mind, to which only you have access and where only you can do the work. And dhyana paramita in general, Gom, is about that work. So now let's see let's look at Gampopa's teachings. As with all the paramitas, then we start with some second page of your support document. If you don't have this paramita, what's wrong? What's the fault? What's the drawback? And if you do, what's the benefit? So it starts, whoever has qualities of generosity and so forth. So it means the first four. Generosity, someone's generous, someone's got right conduct, somebody is forbearing, somebody is diligent. So far, so good. They have developed those significantly. Whoever has the qualities of generosity and so forth, but not that of meditation, can be overpowered by distractions. I think we all know about this, don't we? And then this quote from Shantideva, this next one, please learn it. Please learn it. It's one of the big quotes of this whole chapter. Humans whose minds are very distractive live between the fangs of the afflictions. Fangs are the teeth of animals like lions, tigers, or snakes. They've got fangs. And so snakes, they can like that. Then you're paralyzed. And then they've got this amazing body where bit by bit they can, because they don't have teeth to chew you. They've only got teeth to paralyze or kill you. And then you go inside and you get dissolved in juice over many, many, many days. So here it's the fangs of the afflictions. Desire, lust, attraction, attachment, anger, resent, upset, hostility, jealousy, competition, pride, arrogance, complacency, ignorance in all of its forms. They're like the snake. And as long as we haven't mastered our mind, then at any time, and in the old days of circuses with real live animals, sometimes there was these people with tame lion where the lion tamer would put his head in the lion's mouth. Very scary. This is so true. We looked at this with anger when we studied forbearance, that you can be sweet, calm, composed, in control for years, for decades, but then one day something can come along that upsets you and you lose so much. You lose your friends, you lose your dignity, you lose your Dharma, you turn away from Dharma practice, you cause so much damage in a few seconds. Speech, action, people kill other people, whatever it is. It comes out and it overwhelms you. It's like the fangs. And the same can happen with desire. So many people I've seen, either wanting to become monastics or they already became monastics, and they think, that's it, that's finished now. All that affection stuff, kissing, cuddling, all that stuff, finished. Need for it, finished. Don't need that anymore. Gone. They really believe it, and it really feels like it's true, and it's kind of now, you've kind of come off the side roads and you've hit the highway to enlightenment. And they take monks' vows, nuns' vows, or they're thinking of it. And especially the ones who are thinking of it, you can almost guarantee that karma and mara, they're going to pull somebody out from nowhere. And all of a sudden the juices start running, there's attraction, and life changes. This fangs of the afflictions, so strong. And the same with anger, and the same with jealousy. People leave worldliness. And I've seen it amongst Dharma translators. You're in the Dharma, you're a translator doing wonderful work, working with Rinpoches. Then there's another translator, and people get jealous, and then it's back there. And so on. So this is so true. When we talk, it sounds like theory of first bodhisattva level. It's so real. It's when you get to the point where your afflictions cannot get you anymore. Remember in the dying teachings, if you did those, the power of repudiation. Here you're ending this life, you're looking back, you're seeing how ego, meaning these afflictions, your angry self, your jealous self, and so on, got you. And we say, no, next time round, the days when you could get me are over. So that's our wish, but there will come a point, there really will, happiest time of all your Dharma journey, where it can't get you anymore. So until that point, we live between the fangs. So it doesn't mean the fangs are working all the time. If they were there all the time, it might be easier. It's like a nuisance person who lives next door all the time. It's not like that. We've got used to having nice neighbors, and then all of a sudden they move out, and noisy, horrible neighbors move in. and your whole life is changed. The fangs aren't biting all the time. We're living with this threat, this possibility. So anyway, that's if you don't have meditation. So it says one of the main tasks of meditation is first to give understanding of the mind. And then in the light of that, control over the mind. So here we're looking at the very first stages of our path before we look at dhyana, jhana, absorption. We're looking at mindfulness. The 4 stages of Buddhist mindfulness: mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of Dharma. So through meditation as a tool, then we meditate as an act, which means that meditate gone, we change our habits so that we become aware of our body. We use our body differently. We become aware of our feelings, and we learn not to be so reactive, to be reactive in a different way. We become aware of our mind, and through sitting, observing, we see our processes, our habitual processes, the thoughts, the feelings, the memories, the fantasies, the stuff that comes up again, and it's so boring. It's so boring, but that's you. I mean, it's me. I don't mean it's you. I think you're a lot better than I am. But with me, it's just so boring. You want to swear at it. You want to just say, off. Not again. Not again. You were rattling on yesterday and the day before and last year and all my life. Why can't you just go somewhere? But it comes back. It comes back again and again. So mindfulness means we see it. And already the seeing of it is not just the seeing of it. The seeing of it is part of the getting free from it. Getting free from it. So before we gain skill in meditation, we are the puppets of habit. Anger, passion, pride, jealousy, loneliness, self-pity, frustration, confusion, and all the rest can overpower the mind and lead us into harmful or useless actions. So that's the first thing. We live between the fangs of the affliction. Second, without meditation, clear cognition will not arise. Now, clear cognition comes more directly from dhyana in the sense of whatever we do that's related to mastering the mind through focus. So we'll come to this in a little while in Gampopa, our very definition of dhyana, which will be keeping the mind one-pointedly where you want it in virtue. That's our definition. We'll come to that and explore it, I hope, today. Maybe not. But the point is, without dhyana, we will not develop clear cognition. Clear cognition is in 5 or sometimes 6 parts. And so it's not a teaching on those, but I need to tell you what they are. First is clairvoyance, although one hesitates to use that term these days. For instance, in the Paris business directory, there are more clairvoyants, marabouts, and so on than there are doctors, and they charge more as well. And so they claim to be clairvoyant and they can help you with your romance, your business, your health, and everything. So we're not talking about that. In general, some people are genuinely clairvoyant, but lots of people are a little bit. But then, excuse me for the expression, but it's such a good one. It's a French expression. It is to fart higher than your ass, which means that you have this much ability, but you act and present yourself as though you have that much. And people believe it. So it's a wonderful expression, and I find anyway. So, péter plus haut que son cul. Voilà. So anyway, real clairvoyance is what it says. It's clear seeing. And it means because your mind is clear through meditation, then you gain what's called divine eye, and the other eye is Dharma eye, Prajna eye, Jhana eye, Buddha eyes, which means you can see like a microscope. You can see things far away in the cosmos. Like if I look now, furthest I can see is the wall over there. I can't see through it, beyond it. I certainly can't see into the Orion constellation and what's going on there, on the planets there. But clear seeing means wherever the mind turns itself, then what presents itself to your visual cortex is true. First one, clear seeing. There's more, but let's leave it at that. Clear hearing is the same. One hears differently. One hears sounds the normal ear cannot hear. One hears conversations far away, and so on. Clear hearing. There is clear knowledge of others' minds, which of course needs perfect ethics to handle, but you know what's going on in somebody else's mind. Usually only when you're invited in to know, because they want help and you're a teacher. So clear cognitions are for teachers. But anyway, you won't get them without meditation, without dhyana. And so this knowledge of others' minds. Number 4 is knowledge of past lives and future lives, but mainly past lives, one's own, and then others, depending on how developed that skill is. So priceless for helping people work with their karma. So lamas who have clear cognition know, I've known people who have obstacles from past lives, and very good lamas, like the previous Kala Rinpoche would say, don't go into retreat, because there will be obstacles that will come up, and just now you couldn't handle them. Wait, do more Dhamma before you go into retreat, because he could see. And one person who was a very good friend, he said that too, who didn't follow his advice and went to retreat. Beautiful person, wonderful person, so gentle. You'd never have thought something could go wrong with that person. And totally crazy for the rest of her life. So that kind of knowledge, a heartbreak, unless she was a friend. So that kind of knowledge is so priceless, to know past lives of people. Clearly, it's clear cognition. It's not some kind of feeling that's vague. We're talking about clarity. Just as clear as what we see with good eyesight and good hearing and so on. Knowledge of past lives. And number 5 is knowledge of how to perform what people call miracles. There's no such thing as a miracle, the laws of nature are the laws of nature, but there are inner laws of nature, let's say, that people don't know about. And so when handled with proper ethics, then miracles can be very useful for teaching. Those are the 5 general clear cognitions. The sixth one's got an interesting name. It's called knowledge of exhaustion. And it doesn't mean you know that you're exhausted. It means you know authentically, clearly, when your karmic tendencies of like jealousy or whatever it is have really gone. It's like in Vajrasattva practice. We need to know when the purification's been done enough. So anyway, the clear cognitions are vital tools in helping others. They will only come through dhyana meditation. So you've got those in your support document. And then there is no profound wisdom. Now the word for this is prajna. Prajna, pragana, pranja, pronounced differently, different options, but wisdom, deep wisdom, which will be our sixth paramita, and that we'll be studying next year. On the khenpo.eu site, I've put the course details for that, or a bit of them started. So that's our sixth and final paramita. But there is no way you can get pranja, deep wisdom, without deep meditation. You can get worldly wisdom, you can study a lot, you can become a khenpo, you can become a geshe. We're not talking about that sort of wisdom. We are talking about deep inner knowledge of the mind that words cannot describe. We can only know through experience. Only with the power of meditation can real prajna and prajna paramita come. So I explained that in the support document. Yep, just one sheet. Not two stuck together. Now, they're the main things. We've seen you're between the fangs of the emotion, you won't get special skills that enable you to help others, and you won't achieve highest wisdom, which you need to become Buddha, if you don't have dhyana paramita. If you have it, then on the contrary, if you're skilled in meditation, then craving for lesser things will be rejected. You won't get caught up in samsara. That means clear cognition will naturally emerge, and many doors of meditation will open. Many doors. Something the ordinary worldly mind cannot imagine. The world of meditation. There's a lovely phrase in Christian teachings. It says, my father's house has many mansions. In English, in the old. It's a strange thing. It's a house, but it's got many mansions inside it. What does that mean? And I saw a Popeye cartoon that was very good for that. I've never seen it again. But Popeye's in the desert, and there's a little tent. And he lifts up the flap at the front of the tent and looks inside. And it's an endless palace. He takes his head out, closes the flap, and his neck extends all the way around the tent and comes back to the flap. He looks surprised, brings his head back on this long neck, and opens the flap and looks inside again. And this is endless mansions and palaces. Our mind is like that. I should really find that Popeye cartoon. It would be a great teaching tool, because once we learn to go inside our mind, really means inside our heart, then we find it's just endless. This is what Gampopa says, endless doors of profound absorption will be opened. And then, most especially, prajna, deep wisdom, will emerge. So, and then at the end of that, of course, there'll be enlightenment. So that's the fault of not having dhyana paramita and the benefits of having it. We do need to think about that. That's the homework. The homework is to think what's become of you. What did the becoming involve? What tools of Dharma have you been given? And how well or effectively are we applying them? We don't need to beat ourselves up. We don't need to be judgmental, but honest. But then we're looking at this to think about the fangs of the defilement. What clear-minded skills do you have? I'll just give you a simple example. When clear cognition starts, like not really clear yet, but the first signs that it's happening are you get premonitions. You know what somebody's going to say, and then they say it. It's like this morning, I was printing this out, and I turned on the printer, and I thought it's going to run out of paper halfway through. I was only printing 5 pages this morning. Page 4, it ran out. It's only a little thing, but things like this happen. You are a bit more lucid. You get feelings about, don't do that, don't go there, don't touch that, better not. So that's interesting because the process is starting, it's teasing. But like real clarity, as in those 5 or 6 clear cognitions, of course, we have a long way to go. But how useful they are for helping others and ourselves in our own journey. We think about that. We think about real prajna, the real deep wisdom that our teachers like Gampopa and Taisitupa have. Akon Rinpoche, how much deep human wisdom he had, how many thousands of people I saw him really help, and who in fact only trusted his advice. I want to tell you something funny, and maybe you won't like it, because sometimes people kind of, say, they think that anyone who's called Lama or Rinpoche is way up there and like almost Buddha. They're not. There's everything. Of course, they need to have got a certain skill set to become a Lama or a Rinpoche, but there's such huge range. Lots of Lamas do, for instance, predictions, or what they call it, oracles. But I remember when the 16th Gampopa was getting ill, and there were 3 schools of thought at least for what will be best for him. Take him to the most expensive medical care in Switzerland or America. Take him to medical care in Southeast Asia, where they had a background of Chinese medicine as well as modern medicine. Or treat him with Tibetan medicine at Rumtek, where he was. And then Akon Rinpoche told me, they've all got their malas out, their rosaries, doing predictions for what's best for him. And he said, but nobody really trusts them. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean? They're Rinpoches. This is famous this Rinpoche, famous that Rinpoche. Can't they just do it? He said, well, between you and me, it often works, but to really trust it, to know where to send His Holiness, because he was happy just being where he was, but they wanted to give him the best medical care. And in fact, there was one Lama, I forget what it was, he wasn't a famous Rinpoche, but they said, everyone trusts his predictions. When he does it, it always works. Maybe I shouldn't have told you that. I'm not trying to destroy your faith. It's just to let you know that the Bodhisattva path is very long. And these skill sets, this clear cognition, they are, if you want to be a Bodhisattva and help other people, like Akon Rinpoche could help them. The reason I said that was because I know so many people who only trusted his advice. He just got it right. He turned something in him, knew that deep wisdom. So we think how wonderful it would be if we can do that. How will we get it? What is this course about? You will only get it through cultivating dhyana, meditation. So now, very quickly, because I need to finish, but then, so what is dhyana as far as we're concerned here? Not meditation in the general picture, not taming the mind with so many things, but dhyana now, more focused. Gampopa tells us its very nature, so this means, this is this Tibetan way of saying definition, is that of stable peace. Stable peace. And the word dhyana, dhyana, in Sanskrit has those resonances. It's the mind, but the main thing, it is stable. When it was translated into Tibetan, it became samten. Sam means your mental processes. Ten means stable, reliable. So, stable peace. Peace means we're at peace with ourselves. We're at peace with other people. We're at peace with the world. We're at peace because of Dharma knowledge. Stable peace. This is dhyana. This is what our various methods, because they're just methods to get to an end. The end is stability and peace. Reliability, but stability means a mind, so we carry on now with the definition, a mind resting inwardly, concentrated on virtue. Every bit of that definition is so powerful. A mind, it's all about our mind. And my teachers have said so much about that, how much we humans neglect our mind. We have beautiful homes. Is your mind as beautiful as your home? Is it as clean? Is it as well organized? Could you invite people into it as happily as you would with your recently vacuumed, nicely dusted and arranged house for a cup of tea, and where there's no more washing up in the sink and so on? Is our mind like that? Have we looked after it as much as the garden, as much as the car, as much as stuff? We neglect our mind. It's quite interesting. In some cultures, there's much more inner cleanliness, bodily cleanliness through all sorts of things. Eating, cleansing habits, yogic habits. And the environment's quite dirty. But then there's meditation as well and clean minds. So anyway, it's about the mind. It's not about how you look when you sit, so somebody seeing you from the outside could say, that's amazing. You know, sat there for 3 hours without moving. Good meditator. But as Gampopa says, yeah, Bears do that, but they're not enlightened. So it's about the mind. Resting doesn't mean, taking time out and having a rest. Not really. It means settled, as opposed to agitated. When we are nicely settled, we stay in one place. We don't, get up for this, get up for that, forgot this, forgot that, jumping all over the place. The main thing is resting. The opposite of resting is distracted. Pulled by this, pulled by that. No choice. The mind is at rest. It's like an aeroplane coming into land. One of the thrills of my life was to go up in an old biplane, Tiger Moth. And so it makes a lot of noise. The engine's right there in front of you. There's just one thin piece of metal. There's no soundproofing. And it's an open cockpit, so you've got all of the air and wind rush. So when you're up, wow, the noise is amazing. When you come into land, usually a bit sideways, so you get the quick descent. And then you taxi and you stop. They don't have brakes. You have to stop on an uphill runway. Otherwise you don't stop. No brakes on a Tiger Moth. But then pop, 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 and you turn off the engine, and it's so quiet. The plane's at rest. The engine's at rest. After being up in all that noise and buzzing here and buzzing there, and it was a great buzz. We buzzed over wild deer and rivers and landscapes. Wonderful. The guy who was piloting, they're funny aeroplanes because the passenger sits in the front seat and the pilot's in the seat behind. It's really strange things. But he went, after he took me the next 2 weeks later, he took his aeroplane on a camping trip over the Okavango at the time when all the animals are migrating. So he had a wonderful buzz. So our mind's buzzing all the time. Can't help it. It goes here, it goes there. This is the mind at rest. Inwardly. This bit will make more sense as the years of your meditation practice evolve. Even if your senses are focused outwards, your mind, your heart is settled at rest inside you. Even though busy stuff is happening where you are, and even though you have to engage with it, deep inside you, your mind is at peace and at rest in a stable place. This is what dhyana is there for, a mind at rest. Inwardly means it's not distracted outwards. I've got my own set of mental crazy images. I had one, but not say his name, driver when I visited a Spanish center, the most frightening driver I've ever been with. He was very nervous, like all the time, even though we're on a straight road. He's like this, but he kept turning around to talk to us and then quickly look back and then turn around because he was so engaged in the conversation and things. I thought, what are we going to get there? Will we get there alive? No. But I mean, he was like busy. He was very busy. He survived to a very good age. So it must have been a good driver, I suppose. But to look at, it wasn't. So anyway, the mind not out there, with this, with that, at rest, inwardly. This gets interesting. What does inwardly mean when it comes to the mind? What's the inside and the outside of the mind? Oh. So at first, it's quite easy because when we meditate, you can feel sometimes your whole energy settles, like in your heart center or in one of you feel, or in your hara, in the navel chakra, you feel very kind of stable and energy settled in terms of your body. It feels like you've gone deeply inside and settled. But later on, it becomes more than that, because it is the mind settled in its own core and nature, rather than settled physically. These words, this definition, is just amazing. It's amazing. We do need to know it by heart as our definition of what is dhyana. And then it ends, concentrated on virtue. Concentrated, focused, of course, that's the very nature of dhyana. It's focused. But on virtue is so important. We could have all of this. Let's go back. A mind resting inwardly, concentrated on evil. Now, this exists. This exists. Some of the most evil people are very focused, very undistracted. Which brings us to a general point that is made in the teachings on dhyana paramita, is that dhyana, and even in the earliest sense, which was the main sense in the early centuries of Buddhism, working through the first dhyana, the second dhyana, third dhyana, fourth dhyana, is not necessarily virtuous. Karmically, it's neutral. But it can also be used, it could be used, let's hope not, for evil intention, in which case you gain power over your mind, you can hold your mind in focus on what is damaging for others, on what is evil, it's horrible. So, in general, this is very interesting for those of us who meditate. You know, the mind settled and focused feels like you've done something good. The mind at peace, in a state of peace, feels like something good, but in fact, karmically, it's neutral. It's good if it's part of a journey to wisdom and enlightenment and all the positive qualities. So this is why the definition has to end focused in virtue. But how do you do that when you are practicing shamatha? Because the practice is what? Concentrate on a flame. Whenever you're distracted, come back to the flame. What's sacred, what's good about a flame? You're just a human being looking at a flame. What's good about that? Maybe by focusing on a flame, you can learn to be a very evil human being. You can learn to dominate others, have a strong mind, influence others. So this is why when we meditate, we start with prayers and we end with dedication. We make our karmically neutral effort, for however long we meditate, we make it a karmically fruitful, virtuous thing. By the prayers at the beginning, we're meditating so that we can liberate our mind as bodhisattvas, and at the end, we dedicate it to all sentient beings. Very important. But in our definition of dhyana, then Well, that's your homework, is learn this definition in your support document. Its very nature is that of stable peace, a mind resting inwardly, concentrated on virtue. Now, you could add something to this. Sometimes it's there, not in this definition. You could add one more subphrase, one more phrase, where you want it. A mind resting inwardly, where you want it, concentrated in virtue. Now, this is relatively useful for us because at the beginning, before we have the power of meditation, our mind goes where we don't want it to go. We get angry, we get depressed, we get full of self-pity, we get stuck in loops of thinking about something again and again and again and again. We can't get rid of it. We want to get rid of it, but we can't. Our mind is not our servant. Our mind is our ruler. Our habitual mind is our ruler. So more generally, dhyana is there to help us keep our mind where we want it, one-pointedly in virtue. So please think about today's topics over the next couple of weeks, and now we'll dedicate whatever was good and virtuous, we'll share it with other beings. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being obtained. Through the main enemy, mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may I quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Thank you. So it was a bit long, but I think I said what I wanted to say in this session. And I welcome your comments and anything, questions, anything you'd like to share.
I have a question, Ken.
Hi, James. Yeah.
Would you say there's a correlation between degree of distraction and degree of being subjected to our afflictions? In other words, if we're having a day where we're particularly distracted, are we likely to be particularly burdened by our afflictions? Or if you have two people, one very much more distracted than the other, would that one person, generally speaking, be more subjected to their afflictions than the other? Does it kind of work like that?
Yes and no, I think. If you understand distraction as belonging to the affliction of ignorance, then you can be distracted without necessarily being angrier, without necessarily feeling more hostile towards somebody else, without being more jealous, without having more desire. Probably if your mind is distracted, you might be more vulnerable to those things, but distraction in itself is more to do with one aspect of ignorance. So when we go through Gampopa's chapter, he goes through the main mind poisons and the meditations, which are the remedies for them. But having gone through the 5 main mind poisons, number 5 being ignorance, The remedy for that is meditating on interdependent origination, one. But then, because all of us are distracted, because it's universal, then it says also for a mind which is not, because the way it's phrased is, when you go into retreat, longish retreat, you should spend the first time working on your worst defilement, whatever it is. Because otherwise that will get in the way. And so then it goes through, if your worst defilement is this is the remedy. We go through all five. But then it says, if none of the five are really predominant, we've just got a bit of all of them, then distraction will be the main problem. And for distraction, there are many methods, but the main one is the breath, concentrating on the breath. But technically, distraction belongs to ignorance. Does that help?
Yeah, my question was sort of inspired by the quote, humans whose minds are very distracted live between the fangs of the affliction. So I was thinking, are we generally living more distractedly? When we're living distractedly, are we more susceptible to those fangs? And actually, specifically, I was thinking about a little bit modern society, modern life, where there's so much more distraction with mobile telephones, things like that.
All sorts of things, yeah, all sorts of things. And the soundbite generation. You've got a few seconds before the attention goes to something else.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that quote, in the context, it's, what's the problem if we don't have dhyana, if we don't have control over our mind so that we can keep it where we want it, right? So then you live between the fangs of the defilement. And the process to getting the ability to have your mind where you want it is one of learning what distraction means, and then working with that hands-on, on the meditation cushion, so that it gets you less and less. I think that quote is more about if you don't have dhyana yet. Generally, distraction and the afflictions is complicated. I mean, looking at it moment by moment, second by second, what goes on when you get distracted. Tract means traction, drawn. Dis means away from. So our mind is distracted from our bodhisattva intention by jealous thoughts and jealous stuff that's building up, for instance, in these seconds. So it's distracted from goodness. But then if you got distracted, the jealousy would stop because you'd be distracted into something else. You wouldn't be focused on jealousy. You need to look at it moment by moment. And this is what we do. This is the whole point of mindfulness, cultivating mindfulness. Mindfulness of body, feelings, mindfulness of mind. It is becoming aware of this. And it's only in the living awareness that we can start to see the need and the benefits of what we're doing. That was a complicated answer, but I think it's a complicated topic. You can't give a simple answer for a complicated reality.
See the loops.
Yeah.
Affliction, distraction, and affliction. Thanks, Ken.
Welcome.
Ken, just I suppose a couple of quick observations. I've certainly noticed over the years that I have had, in varying degrees, little kind of premonitions of things in different levels, sort of quite a lot of different times. But it's only happened when I suppose in a way my mind's been in a sort of clarity, and not trying at all to look for anything. Although one striking example did happen in a moment of funny kind of anger. It's the most amazing bit of mind clarity that I've had with another animal. But that I mean, it's a little story. But the so I suppose there's that I've noticed, but also the kind of image that came to mind while you were describing, I think dhyana, was kind of sitting in like a busy airport departure lounge with hundreds of people walking by, and just having to wait without a book or anything, and just that state of sometimes being able to get into of just sitting there, not really thinking about anything, and noticing people go by, able to respond to them if they come and ask me a question, but otherwise just not trying to hold on to wondering about this person or that person, you know, all that kind of thing. And I've noticed that in some meditation. So I don't know, that's kind of just the image. I don't know if that's useful in any way, but
it's helpful. Yeah,
very good. Image that came to mind really from my own experience.
Yeah, it reminds me of the time I was traveling with Akon Rinpoche, and we heard the flights delayed for 6 hours. We were in it was a local airport with just rows of green plastic chairs. And I said, because we were doing an internal flight, we didn't need customs and not immigration or anything like that. I said, oh, we can go into town for a restaurant and get a meal. And he looked at me, he said, no, we'll sit here and we'll watch the people for the next 6 hours. And so we sat there, and it was like that, you know, people going by, and it's very good. But those moments of clarity, that's the word. I mean, we say clear cognition or clarity. It is because the mind's clear. It's not necessarily because we're doing a shamatha technique and then that brings the clarity. It's because of our lifetime or our years or our days of shamatha that these moments of clarity come. Where it gets more complicated is because we did shamatha, dhyana, in previous lives. Some people naturally have moments of clarity or slight clairvoyant skills in this life. It's a kind of a benefit from past lives. But unless we actually do the methods in this life and develop our shamatha, dhyana, then those things fade away. We can't take them for granted as part of us forever. And sometimes they come along and help us in critical moments as well, choice moments, power of past life prayers, past life practice.
Yeah, I think the point about your underlying intention is really important there, because it would be very easy to misuse that with maybe in temporary success, but long-term failure and problems.
Yeah, it's like the Emperor in Star Wars. You know, they've all got these lightsabers and they're buzz, like sword fighting. But that guy doesn't just need one; he can just sort of zap people with his mind, and doesn't need to play about with a toy or a sword or learn swordsmanship. He just does people with his mind. So yeah, could be a very evil mind.
Thank you, Ken.
It's wonderful. We've got Star Wars and those kind of things to help us these days.
Yeah, Ken, you were explaining about GOM and understanding our habits and then replacing them with more virtuous habits, but also the difficulty that there's always going to no matter how good you are, there's always one that's going to come at you. And you also talked a little story about Akon Rinpoche and mosquitoes. The Dalai Lama often talks about mosquitoes, and one thing he often says is he explains is, when mosquito comes and bites, I think, oh yes, very good. You know, have some of my blood. And when the second one comes, I think, oh yes, yes, here, have some of my blood. He said, but when the third one comes, I think, oh, maybe not so sure.
Yeah, there's who was it? I always get them mixed up, although they were different centuries. But either Kamachame or Patrul Rinpoche actually made a practice of going out in the summer and stripping off and giving the body to mosquitoes. So working on that one full time.
Ken, I have a question that might follow on nicely. In the aspiration prayer at the beginning for bodhicitta, I have a feeling about the first and second line about happiness and suffering and virtues and the outcome of those. But the third line is of great confusion to me. And I'm not really sure what I'm wishing for in that third line. Could you say something small about that? Because I realize it's probably a mammoth topic.
Yeah, I mean, what it says is the happiness which is beyond happiness and suffering. And it's the reality of that changes in the stages of the path. But what we're aiming for at the beginning is that happiness which is beyond happiness and suffering comes from within, mainly through the power of meditation. So you feel stable and at peace with yourself and at everyone. And it's a well-being, let's say. I mean, happy is a funny word. And it's a translation of the Tibetan dewa. Dewa doesn't mean just happy like smiley face. It means you are well. You are well-being. And that's why in the beginning term, I actually define it. Dewa means all those things about long life, good health, friends, good reputation, places, all of those things make you feel well or part of wellness. So here, the wellness, the goodness, the feeling of joy actually comes from within and does not depend on other. And the happiness and suffering that it's beyond depends on circumstances, depends on other people. So it comes in through our sense doors, if we look technically, and what we see, what we hear, in terms of other people's faces, what we hear them saying, what the weather's doing, what life's doing. It's sensorial mainly. And depending on whether the senses are being stimulated this way or that, we feel good about it or we don't feel good about it. And then that's where our happiness and suffering in the world comes from. Here, one's achieved a state of inner peace with oneself, and it's a locus. It's actually where you're based. It's where your default nature is, and that being very much connected with what we call our Buddha nature. It's a surface manifestation of our Buddha nature. Then it's always on the path. It's getting more and more there. When we get to first bodhisattva level, it will always be there. So when we make that third line of the prayer, as bodhisattvas, we want to reach first bodhisattva level, where we're never separate from that being at peace with ourselves, at peace with everything that happens, because we understand karma.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ken, I have a question. I'm not quite sure how to word it, if you can bear with me.
Have a go, Stacey. Yeah.
Hypothetically speaking, if a person had that clear mind, clairvoyance, whatever you want to call it, on an almost daily basis, and that's possibly come from what I'm hearing you say, is possibly come from previous lifetimes, but the compelling path of this life is more drawn towards developing, say, awareness of compassion and mindfulness, etc. And so there isn't trying to balance. So I'm finding difficulty. So say that clear mind hypothetically is what got a person where they are today. Then would there be a message in there that if that person was to like practice samadhi and really work with that, then that would benefit future lives to come,
Mm-hmm.
to keep them on that path, but the pull towards easing or the compassion or the easing of suffering for others is a little bit stronger in this lifetime. How would one balance that theoretically?
Yeah, with whatever inherited skills we've got. So it can be these mind skills. It can be good karma, where you've got material wealth and circumstances. It can be whatever these things are. With Dharma, we want to invest whatever skills and blessings we have in a Dharma path. And so that's why this is paramita number 5. Because we want to be generous with them, we want to help other beings as part of our compassion. But then, so we're not using superpowers to benefit ourselves. Generosity is, we are definitely clear that if we have these gifts from past life, we want to use them to help others uniquely. And then paramita of right conduct means we need to start thinking about the ethics and how do we use these ethics, this insight that you might have into other people or life. What is an ethical way to use that? And the very depths of ethics is not to feed ego, especially if it makes you a special person and you see things or you get things that other people don't get. We don't want that feeding our ego. We want to be humble Buddhists, but we explore the whole world of ethical, like clairvoyance. If you can know somebody else's mind, there's very, very necessary ethics there. You just don't go peeking into other people's lives, even if you could. You only go on invitation. And things like this, the right conduct, and I think those first 2 paramitas are there. In general and in the long term, whether these skills are there or not, because they can sometimes come and go, is not the most important thing. It always says that. They're called siddhi in the text. And it says, if they come and when they're there, we're grateful, but we're not focused on them. They're secondary, and people who focus on them can get into dangerous tracks. It says what we're focused on is goodness, virtue, compassion, and then if we have those skills, to use them to that end. That's most important.
So the instinct to follow the compassion and the mindfulness, regardless of what's happening there, will, and ultimately that's heading towards where we want to be.
Yeah, and there will be what you said, that if they're helpful skills, then we want to make them more reliable, more stable, which is very much what dhyana is about. And so that happens through cultivating meditation, as we learn in this chapter from Gampopa.
Very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Completely hypothetical.
Okay, I think we're more or less done for today. A lot of your time I've taken up. So for this course, I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And then I'll see some of you for the monthly Tonglen next Saturday. Today is a special Buddhist day. It's full moon, but it's also full moon with an eclipse tonight in Europe. And so these are special times, more powerful times, let's say, rather than special. And so let's dedicate very beautifully today. We already did it, but just now dedicate all that was good, and especially to our own ability to practice these teachings. Thank you. Go well.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Ken.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye.
Thank you, Ken.
Very well.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.